through the book of Daniel. Okay, that was the image that we did the last sermon. Daniel 7, verses 2 and 3. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, one diverse from one another. Daniel has had another vision after the image was given to Nebuchadnezzar, which was given to Daniel so he could explain the dream to the king in chapter 2. Now in chapter 7, Daniel sees four beasts coming out of the great sea. The first was like a lion, the second was like a bear, the third was like a leopard, and the fourth was a nondescript beast with 10 horns, iron teeth, nails of brass. Let's take a few minutes to go over these beasts.
I'll just suggest it for you.
Okay. Daniel 7, verses 4. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, and I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. The lion is a fitting symbol for Babylon. It is represented in history as a lion with two wings, and it is also represented in the Bible as both a lion and an eagle. Habakkuk 1, verses 6 to 8. For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land, to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards, and are more fierce than the evening wolves. And their horsemen shall spread themselves, and their horsemen shall come from far. They shall fly as the eagle that hasteth to eat. In Jeremiah 4, verses 7, it's represented as a lion. The lion has come up from his thicket, and the destroyer of the Gentiles is on his way. He is gone forth from his place to make thy land desolate, and thy cities shall be laid waste without inhabitants. We know that the Babylonians were the one that God used to desolate the land of Israel during the times of Jeremiah. So the lion and the eagle's wings are a consistent representation of Babylon. This first beast corresponds with the head of gold in the dream of Daniel 2. This is the second beast, or the kingdom, to rise out of the sea. And behold, another beast, a second, like unto a bear, and it raised itself on one side, and had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. Now the second beast, the bear, came up out of the sea after the lion, and it had 3 ribs in his mouth, and raised on one side. The raising on one side was to designate the inequality in the Medo-Persian Empire. They were never equal in strength in the empire. And the 3 ribs in the mouth are symbolic of Babylon, Lydia, and Egypt, the 3 powers that they defeated in a rise to dominance on the world stage. The phrase, arise, devour much flesh, is used to describe the bear. The Medo-Persian Empire was much larger than the Babylonian Empire. They ruled over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. The Medes and the Persians ruled from 538 to 331 BC. Daniel 7, verses 6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. The third beast that comes up is the leopard that has 4 wings and 4 heads, and that represents Greece. The leopard was an interesting choice for this beast because the leopard is an already fast land animal, and it is a skilled hunter, and it devours more predators than any other carnivore. The leopard is more agile and swift than the lion or the bear, yet more frail. The speed must have been immense with the 4 wings on the back of an already fast animal. And as history shows that the rise of the Macedonian Empire under Alexander the Great was a rapid one. In just 3 years, Alexander had conquered the entire Medo-Persian Empire. At the height of his empire, Alexander was cut short and died after some riotous drinking at age 32. After his death, the emperor was divided between his 4 generals, Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. Hence, the 4 heads represented on the leopard are the 4 divisions of Greece under his 4 generals. Daniel 7:7. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue of it with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. The 4th beast is the nondescript beast. It doesn't have a name, but it does have some identifying markers, such as the 10 horns on its head. It had great iron teeth. It destroyed and utterly crushed everything that opposed it, and it was different from the other beasts. Later on, it was described as having nails of brass in verse 19. We know that the beast is a kingdom in Bible prophecy, is represented by a king. In Daniel 7:17, these beasts, which are 4 kings which arise out of the earth. And Daniel 7:23, thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. Now let's look at the description of Daniel 7:23 and Daniel 2:40. And the 4th beast, the 4th kingdom shall be as strong as iron, forasmuch as iron breaketh in pieces and subdues all things. And as iron that breaketh all these shall break in pieces and bruise. This is describing the same power. Now, on to Daniel 7, verses 19. Then I would know the truth of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped with the residue of his feet. This verse has a lot of significance, especially when you looked at the fact that the iron represents Rome and the brass represents Greece. And verse 12 says that the beasts had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So while they no longer ruled, there were elements of each kingdom that remained until the final beast was destroyed, which is displayed in the beast with the iron teeth and the nails of brass, showing that elements of Greece are used in the 4th beast. This is consistent with the statue being destroyed in the image and the entirety turned to chaff. Thou sawest that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them into pieces. Then the iron and clay and the brass and the silver and the gold broke into pieces together, and became as the chaff of the threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that there was no place found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. The entire system was swept away at the same time. This is in total agreement with the statement about the beasts having their lives prolonged for a season and a time. Then the stone hits, and the entire image is destroyed at the same time. And Daniel makes a clear note that all the elements of the image were destroyed at the same time. Now moving on to Daniel 7, verses 8. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were the eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Rome was different because it did not get conquered, and it went through more than one phase, 3 phases to be exact. One phase is a civil power. The civil power was the pagan Roman Empire. The next phase was the 10 horns, or the divided kingdom, Roman Empire. And the last phase, as a religious political power, the little horn power, the Holy Roman Empire, or the papacy. And verse 8 begins to explain the difference between Rome and the other kingdoms. Daniel was considering the horns, and there came up among them another little horn. So it was one that was not of the 10, it was an 11, and before whom 3 of the horns fell. The little horn of itself did not pluck up the horns. The horns were plucked up by the roots before him, and being plucked up by the roots signifies that there was no trace left of them. They were destroyed in their entirety. The three kingdoms that were uprooted were completely obliterated from history. Even the record of these kingdoms were wiped from existence. The horns were destroyed by someone other than the little horn. They were destroyed for the horn, but not by it. This point is repeated again in the 20th verse of Daniel. And the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. It also repeats that the horn has eyes, and a mouth that speaks great things. This is important because it's repeated. So what is the significance of the eyes of a man, and a mouth that speaks great things? Ephesians 1 verses 18 says, "The eyes of your understanding being enlightened, that ye may know what is the hope of his calling, and what is the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints." The eyes represent the understanding of a man, the spiritual discernment. So the eyes of a man says that this power relies on human understanding rather than the understanding of God. The mouth spoke great things in verse 7 and verse 20. So let's look a little closer at those things. Revelation 13 verses 5. "And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months." The great things are tied to speaking blasphemies, and it rules for 42 months. So this power is an adversarial power that blasphemes against God. So let's look at what the Bible defines as blasphemy. John 10 verses 30 to 33. Jesus says, "I and my Father are one." Then the Jews took up stones to stone him. Jesus answered them, "Many good works have I showed you from my Father. For which of these do ye stone me?" The Jews answered him, saying, "For a good work we stone thee not, but for blasphemy, and because that thou, being a man, makest thyself God." When a human being claims to be God, or God on earth, that is blasphemy. Another case of blasphemy is found in Mark chapter 2, verses 7. "Why does this man thus speak blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God only?" Claiming to forgive sins is also considered blasphemy, so this is an identifying mark of the little horn. So let's go over the identifiers of the little horn power this far. Number 1. It arises out of the 4th beast, which is Rome. It arises out of the 10 horns that grew out of Rome, the 10 divisions of the Western Roman Empire. The little horn rises after the 10 horns, meaning that it has to arise after 476 AD, when the Western Roman Empire fell apart. 3 of the horns were plucked up before the little horn as it rose to prominence. We know that the Ostrogoths, the Heruli, and the Vandals were exterminated at the command of the Bishop of Rome. Number 5. The little horn speaks great and blasphemous words against the Most High. Let's go over a few of those words. "The priest is the man of God, the minister of God. He that despiseth the priest despises God. He that hears him hears God. The priest remits sins as God, and that which he calls his body at the altar is adored as God by himself and by the congregation. It is clear that their function is such that none greater can be conceived, wherefore they are justly called not only angels, but also God, holding as they do among us the power and authority of the immortal God." This is from the Council of Trent, page 543 and 544. Now on to another quote. "The priest is really and truly forgives sins in the virtue of the power given to him by Christ." And the next one. "And God himself is obliged to abide by the judgment of his priest, either to pardon, not to pardon, or to pardon, according as they refuse to give absolution, provided the penitent is capable of it." Number 6. This power would have the eyes of a man, meaning that its spiritual discernment would be from human reason and not from God. Now we're going to go over a couple more. Number 7. The little thorn would think itself able to change God's laws, from Daniel 7:25. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and a dividing of time. Here are some more quotes about the change in the Sabbath. Peter and his successors have power to impose laws both preceptive and prohibitive. Power likewise to grant dispensation from these laws, and when it needful, to annul them. It is theirs to judge offenses against these laws, to impose and remit penalties. This judicial authority will even include the power to forgive sin. For sin is a breach of the laws of the supernatural kingdom and falls under the cognizance of its constituted judges. Catholic Encyclopedia, Volume 12, page 265. This next quote is from James Cardinal Gibbons, Faith of Our Fathers, page 89. But you may read from the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, and you will not find a single line authorizing the sanctification of Sunday. The Scriptures enforce the religious observance of Saturday, a day which we never sanctify. This is from the Catechism. Question: Have you any other way of proving that the Church has power to institute festivals of precept? Answer: Had she not such power, she could not have done that in which all modern religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday, the first day of the week, for the observance of Saturday, the seventh day, a change for which there is no scriptural authority. Next one comes from the Catholic Mirror, same from James Cardinal Gibbons. The Catholic Church, by virtue of her divine mission, changed the day from Saturday to Sunday. And then we go again to the Catechism in 1957. Question: Which day is the Sabbath day? Answer: Saturday is the Sabbath day. Why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer: We observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. And the last quote: Sundays are marked or authority. The Church is above the Bible, and the transference of the Sabbath is proof of this fact. Number 8. The little horn was different than the other horn. It was a religious political power, a union of church and state. Daniel 7:24. And out of the 10 horns of this kingdom there are 10 kings that shall arise. And another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. This, number 9, this power would rule for time and times, and half a time, before the judgment of Daniel 24, not 24, sorry. A time is 1 year, a time is 2 years, and half a time is half a year, or 6 months. 3.5 years are equal to 42 months, or 1,260 days. 30 days in a month times 42 months is 1,260 days. From Numbers 14:34 and Ezekiel 4:6, so you can see that a year is a day, where it says even 40 days, each day for a year, and in 4:6 it says, I have appointed thee each day for a year. This 1,260-day number is so important, the Bible repeats it 7 times in total. In Daniel 7:25, 12:7, Revelation 11:2, verses 3, 12 verses 6, and verses 14, and chapter 13, verses 5. And those numbers are all tied to the same power. Number 10, he would persecute the saints. From Daniel 7:25, sorry. This power is a persecuting power. It persecuted God's people during the 1260-year period from 538 AD, when the Bishop of Rome had the last of the 3 kingdoms uprooted, completely annihilated, and was given all civil authority in Western Europe by Emperor Justinian, who set up his capital in Constantinople. The Roman Church was responsible for the deaths of an estimated 100 million people during the Dark Ages, making them by far responsible for more deaths than anyone else in human history. Now, after the little horn's 1260-year period, or time, times, and half a time, the judgment takes place. We see this order of events repeated in this chapter, placing a significance on the importance of the judgment and attaching it to a point in time in the future, from Daniel's day. In verse 9, right after the little horn speaking great things, next is the judgment. We can see that the judgment takes place in heaven because it is the Ancient of Days, which is God the Father, and this is evident from verse 13, when the Son of Man comes to him to receive the kingdom. This means that the judgment takes place in heaven. All the teachings about you go to heaven or hell at death are because you are judged at death are shown to be unbiblical because the Bible clearly places the judgment at a specific point in time. As a result of the judgment, the beast is destroyed and his kingdom is taken away. Verse 11 says the beast is slain and his body was destroyed and given to the burning flame. This same beast is spoken of in Revelation 20, where it says the beast was taken along with the false prophet, and both of these were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone. Back to Daniel 7, verses 19 to 21 shows the fourth beast, then the persecution of the saints, then the judgment. If we didn't understand those first two times, the order is explained yet again in verses 23 to 27. The fourth beast power, then thinking to change times and laws, then the 3.5 years, the 42 months, or the 1260 days. Then comes the judgment. After the judgment, then the saints possess the kingdom. And that takes place after the second coming. The order of events is consistent with the statue in Daniel 2. The stone being cut out without hands represents the judgment, because no human part takes part in the judgment. It is divine in origin. Let's go over the order of events again. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, 10 divisions of Rome, little horn, judgment, destruction of the beast at the second coming. The Bible is crystal clear on the order of events. There can be no mistaking how that happens. Verse 22 breaks this judgment into 3 phases. God the Father sits, and the judgment begins. Then after the investigation, judgment is given in favor of the saints. And then after that, the saints come in and possess the kingdom. In fact, the focal point of this chapter is the judgment and the kingdom being given to Christ and in turn the saints. The 4 kingdoms gives us a timeline. There is tremendous detail given on the little horn so that there is no mistaking the identity of the little horn. And that understanding that gives us a time frame of when to expect the judgment to commence. And when that begins, it isn't a long time before the judgment comes to an end. This chapter is laying down the foundation of the investigative judgment. We see the books are opened, examined, when the judgment was seated. Then after the judgment was concluded, then the decree or decision of the judgment was carried out. After a careful reading of the chapter reveals that it is only after the judgment description in Daniel 7 verses 9 to 10, 13 and 14, 22 and 26, that the events which carry out the judgments or decisions of that tribunal. So there had to be a process of arriving at those decisions. We know that there is an investigation because in verse 10, books are mentioned, and those are records that are being examined. Are we going to believe what the Bible says? Daniel gives us incontrovertible evidence that God is who he says he is. Peter also tells us that we have a more sure word of prophecy. Whereunto that ye do well, that ye take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place, until the day dawn, and the day star arise in your hearts. Knowing this first, that no prophecy of the Scripture is of any private interpretation, that the prophecy came not in old time by the will of men, but holy men of God spake as they were moved by the Holy Ghost. Peter is telling us that the prophecy was given to us, that the day star, that the bright and morning star would arise in our hearts, and that is Christ. And Christ himself confirmed these words in John 14, verses 29. And now I have told you, before it come to pass, that when it is come to pass, that ye might believe. Christ has given us this prophecy that we would believe. These are the words of Christ, and these are telling us what he is doing for us, what is taking place in the world in relation to what he is doing, so that no matter what happens at the time, we know that his words are sure. and that the prophecy will come to pass, because you can see for yourselves that everything that he has said has come to pass exactly as he said. Will we choose this day to taste Christ as his word and believe on the Lord Jesus Christ because he has given us evidence to believe that he is God? He has told us the future before it happens, and he has given us the interpretation to the prophecy in the scripture. We know that in the events that Babylon, the Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, the 10 kingdoms, the little horn, the 1260 years, and then after that the judgment, the destruction of the little horn, and then the saints inheriting the earth. God lets us know beforehand of the events, so that when they happen, we can have evidence that his words are sure, and that we can believe what he tells us. And that we can believe what he's telling us is going on in heaven. He uses what we can see to give us a point in time to tell us about the judgment which takes place in heaven, which we can't see. And as a result of that judgment, the beast will be destroyed, and justice will be done to the saints. Daniel 7:22. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. The word translated as judgment is the Aramaic word din. It is also translated as justice. And the word came could be also worded as arrived. So God the Father arrived at the judgment to do or to give justice to the saints. The destruction of the beast and the kingdoms of the world and the saints inhabiting the world sometime after the judgment is the justice given to the saints. 3 times the little horn was mentioned speaking blasphemous words and destroying, and 3 times it mentions the judgment after that. The fact that it is repeated 3 times in the chapter shows its importance. The end of the 1260 days signals that the beginning of the judgment is to commence. That coincides with the 3 angels' messages, the first of the 3 angels' messages in Revelation 14, verses 6 and 7. Which says, "And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel, to preach to them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters." We know that we are living in the hour of God's judgment, and who wants to be ready to stand in the day of judgment and be part of the saints who God has ensured that justice will be given to them? I'm going to close with a quote. Our faith in reference to the first, second, and third angels was correct. The great waymarks we have passed are immovable. Although the hosts of hell may try to tear them from their foundation, the triumph in the thought that they have succeeded, yet they do not succeed. These pillars of truth stand firm as the eternal hills, unmoved by all the efforts of men combined with those of Satan and his hosts. We can learn much and should be constantly searching the scriptures to see if these things are so. God's people are now to have their eyes fixed on the heavenly sanctuary, where the final ministration of our great high priest in the work of the judgment is going forward, where he is interceding for his people.